Hi, I'm Brian Kellerman, the co-founder and Chief Food Safety Officer at Kellerman Consulting, and you are watching our video series on corrective and preventive actions. The purpose of this series is to explain how to run a functional program for addressing, correcting, and recording deviations or problems in the facility, as well as the corrective actions and preventive actions required to be put in place for those events. As we start to dive into deviations or problems that occur in the facility and how to resolve them, it is important to understand that you must have written records of such problems and how you resolve them. We have clients from time to time that claim to have no issues in their facility and, as a result, no need for corrective actions. This is not a realistic situation, and it often leads to conflict from outside reviewers of the program. In short, no one believes that a facility runs perfectly, nor should they. Every facility, regardless of the size or type of the operation, will experience issues or deviations from time to time, and it's important that we recognize these events occur in order to correct them and prevent them from reoccurring. We are going to be tying this program directly to a program with a properly functioning culture of food safety, so please make sure to watch that video series as well. In this video, we start by defining the types of issues that can come up during operation, followed by the different types of fixes when those issues occur. Let's start with how to communicate issues within the facility. We are going to start by talking about what we call problematic events within your operation. These are normally undesired deviations from what you expect or want to happen. Problematic events can show up in big ways, as in when an employee gets injured, and small ways, like a condensation drip in a cooler unit. Problematic events may also occur in the form of incorrectly or poorly manufactured products, or when an employee mislabels or incorrectly stores products. An example of this may be when food is placed in ambient storage when it needs to be refrigerated. Another instance can be when a piece of machinery breaks down and you find metal or plastic in food. Each of these examples, while common issues in a food facility, are all very different in nature. Because of this, they require dramatically different types of fixes or corrective actions. Since problematic events are not all the same, and since different responses are required for different types of problems, our first step in a well-developed corrective action program is to identify the types of problematic events and figure out which ones are the most important for swift resolution. As we move to define problematic events, we are going to start by separating them into categories of process deviations and facility problems. Process deviations are those problems that result in errors in following your processes. We can refer to these types of issues as loss of control events, where you could not maintain the conditions for proper processing. Specific examples of process deviations can include products not meeting temperature requirements, such as when a dense item does not cool down fast enough in a freezer or cooler. Another instance of this could be when a cooked item does not reach a high enough temperature during the baking process. Another example of process deviations can include products not meeting specifications, such as items not reaching the target pH or water content for dryness. Loss of control doesn't necessarily mean that someone made a mistake during operations. This is an important distinction for us. It simply means that the process you currently have did not work at the given moment. There are a number of reasons that process deviations could occur, such as improper formulation, low quality ingredients, or using the wrong equipment. The term loss of control can be used interchangeably with terms like deviation, nonconformance, or out of control, as well as the terminology defect action, where there is no danger to safety. With any of these terms, if you are already using them in your facility, that is fine. For the purpose of this video, we are going to use the term loss of control. For these loss of control events, you may find that they are unavoidable where normal variation is expected in food, such as where sides of beef subjected to cooling or cookies baking in a conveyor system have normal variation. In these types of events, you can probably come up with a correction on the spot, like adding an ice bath to speed up the cooling process, or running incomplete cookies back through the baking step a second time to make sure they cook properly. Or you can potentially turn up an oven temperature to get a full cook. For food that doesn't cook properly or cool properly, if you can recook it, do so. For pH control foods, you may add more of the acidic component, such as vinegar, to lower the pH. Where that is possible, your correction during the run and the recording of this action on the operational record completes this. And you can complete the correction process during the final records review step as part of normal operations to note that the correction was performed and recorded for posterity. When you can make a correction on the spot, you can simply write the correction on your operational records, initial and date, and you're all set. Now we want to look at facility issues, which are problematic events caused by failures of people, equipment, or the space we have to operate within. As opposed to process issues, here we find that your process works when everything is going correctly, but things keep popping up to slow you down or prevent proper production from happening. Here, we need to point out that these mishaps, infractions, or errors may not only occur in the production area. Other sources of errors may occur throughout the procurement process, such as when you run out of crucial materials to make the process work, or through the product development process, such as when formulation changes are not properly communicated to operations. When it comes to employee-derived problems, you need to understand as much as possible if employees don't appear to understand the difference between doing something correctly or safely and doing it in an inappropriate or incorrect way. And where you find that confusion, fixing it through improved training should be performed as quickly as is feasible. Whether we are talking about problems caused by employees, machinery, or with the facility itself, these types of issues are generally going to be complex, and the solutions to these problems are going to be multi-step. Next, we discuss the concept of proper record keeping, as well as corrective actions and preventive actions with these types of issues specifically in mind. As a carry-through from our video series on a culture of food safety, here we want to reintroduce the concepts of accountability and impunity, since this is how we assess our employees where corrective actions are required. Remember that impunity is where employees do not feel they are accountable for their actions and mistakes. Employees who do not accept accountability and act with impunity need to be identified and addressed. Similarly, if the team leads, supervisors, QA personnel, or managers responsible for documenting corrective actions act with impunity at the recording step or correction step, you are not going to see effective return of control or sustainable operations. In the end, you need to make sure that your fixes stay fixed, and getting to that place is going to depend on the attitudes of the people you delegate the fixes to, and their ability and willingness to be team players is crucial. You'll hear again about impunity when we address training as part of our corrective action and preventive action program. Let's shift our focus to equipment and situations where you have equipment malfunction or deviations. These are situations where employees may or may not be responsible for the problem, and immediate assessment requires that you figure out if it is a user error or equipment malfunction, since this will greatly affect the corrective action and long-term solution to prevent reoccurring deviations. One should also note that unless you find yourself on the receiving end of some good luck, you are unlikely to work through the problem with a quick correction. As you work to fix the equipment problem, you are likely to have to stop operations temporarily for the fix, which loses valuable production time. For those of us that have run complex quality programs at companies with limited resources, we know that spot welds, aftermarket adjustments of equipment, or disengaging of safety controls may be performed by maintenance or other ill-intentioned team members. Once done, they become fundamental parts of the process, and properly documenting and communicating those repairs or adjustments are incredibly important to our program. Where equipment problems exist, this may be the result of equipment that malfunctions sporadically or continuously, or where equipment is not an ideal match for operations. The workarounds you may come up with will likely only work some of the time. Where you have the wrong equipment for your needs, you have a situation where equipment is invalid, and getting the correct equipment would be an act of validation. Where we have partially invalid operations, where that equipment is not exactly right and workarounds are performed by operations and maintenance, this is especially problematic because it is very dependent on correct training or work instructions, or else those workarounds aren't performed consistently and inconsistency of product will result. These inconsistencies can be crippling for a business. And to add even more trouble with fixes and workarounds is the first time that malfunction occurs, the sense of fixing can be empowering for operations and maintenance. But when it happens a second time or a third time and then becomes a regular occurrence, the gradual loss of morale makes fixes tougher and tougher to properly accomplish, which is why we need tight record keeping in place for posterity. In all of these examples of problematic events for processes or facilities, it does not take a significant breakdown to delay production or mess up our schedule. So where a prompt correction is not the solution, we are now left sorting out a series of actions to deal with the deviation. And it is here where we have complex problems with a series of events required to fully address deviations, loss of control, mishaps, you name it. And to get it back to fully functional and operating as intended, that we need a corrective action and preventive action program. In our next video in this series, we will discuss how to conduct a root cause analysis for these types of deviations. We will also discuss how to take action to both correct and prevent these deviations from reoccurring. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified of our future food safety training videos.